Hi, everyone. Welcome to Made to Dream. I'm your host, Maya Chanel. And on here, we share stories from women around the world to inspire transformation and to gain an awareness for women to dream with unlimited possibilities. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with Miss Kendra Beavis, and she has an interesting story as a brand strategist. And we would just love to hear so much more about this story. So, hi, Kendra. How are you doing today?
Hi, thank you so much for having me on. Very happy to
No,
be
thank
here.
you, thank you. So we just want you to go ahead and tell the audience a little bit about yourself, introduce yourself, and we'll get right into your story.
Sure. So I am a brand designer, brand strategist. I'm classically trained graphic designer, and that sort of evolved into really looking at people coming to me to solve problems and looking at what the solution needs to be. It's oftentimes not what they think. So providing whole branding and strategy for startups, for corporate, is sort of where I live. But I live in New York. I have a small studio I've been running for the past 20 years. And at a point in my life, I was a single mom doing all of this and building my career through all of some different types of situations that I didn't expect to be in. But
Right.
all of that has really made me the strongest I think I probably ever could have been. And I learned a lot about who I am and who I want to be and what I can handle. And I love talking to other women about that.
Awesome, awesome. So can you tell us a little bit about how you were able to make a mindset shift and to inspire transformation within yourself to overcome those difficult obstacles in your life and difficult times to be the person that you are today?
Yeah, I think it's such a hard journey. I think as a woman in general. I mean, growing up and being a girl, you're faced with a lot of things that are tough, whether it's body image or educational discrimination as a woman too. There's
Yeah.
many times where I was just super insecure for so many different reasons.
Mhm.
Being told that, or not even necessarily told, but the idea was instilled that I wasn't smart, that I wasn't beautiful. And, so I think starting in that place of insecurity kind of led me to choosing the wrong man, was a series of wrong men and then the wrong husband. Um,
Mhm.
but looking at my situation now, of course, with hindsight, I'm able to realize that I always had the power to make a different decision. And I think when I was back in those situations of in a really tumultuous marriage, I didn't realize I had that power. And I wish I had a guidepost to see someone who had come through this situation and been okay. I just sort of thought, well, marriage is forever, and we will make it work, and I'll just turn a blind eye to things that um, I didn't want to be a reality. And for a long time, I lived like that. And I guess when I was 2 months pregnant with my daughter, we had been married just shy of 5 years at that point. And I I found out I was having a girl, and then it occurred to me that my kids were going to grow up to be just like their dad if I stayed in this situation. And my daughter would marry someone like him, and my son would be a husband like him. And that was it. I knew I had to change. I had to get out of the situation. So I just started planning. I started talking to people. How do I do this? What does this look like? I looked at other people who had been, I didn't have anybody in my family that had been divorced. So it was difficult to kind of have someone to talk to about it. But I started looking online and finding people that inspired me that had gone through things. And I thought, well, we're no different than each other. So if she did it, then I could do it. And so it
Right.
took a lot of planning but I did eventually, I was able to make that shift, get him out of my life. And then, the actionable part of the planning happened where okay, I need to make this much money a month to afford my home, and I need to get this many clients this month to pay all my bills. And, you know, building that business based on that is kind of how this all kind of came to be.
Mm-hmm. No, that's very awesome. And I know that it's difficult in a sense because it's like when you don't feel like you have that support, or you feel like, I don't really know anyone who's been through my exact situation for me to actually talk to. Because I mean, it's like you can speak to your family or your friends about it, but if they haven't gone through the same thing that you're going through, they really don't know exactly how you feel.
Right.
So
I mean, so many people were like,
really important.
yeah, people thought I was insane. And a lot of it is you don't necessarily know what's going on in someone's situation. Like, they don't always really reveal the real story. So I think a lot of people looked at what was going on and they thought, like, you're leaving him and you're 2 months pregnant. Are you out of your mind?
Right.
But I think the thing that I did realize, and I don't even know really how I built this confidence, but I think it was just a lot of prayer and modeling, that I knew if I had so many people let me down, but I knew that I had never let myself down. I knew if there was a goal, I was going to achieve it, come hell or high water. So once I realized that the only person I had to rely on to get out of this situation was me, it just made it so much easier because I knew I could do that. I could rely on myself. I knew I had the energy to get through it.
Mm-hmm. No, I definitely understand that. You have to sometimes you have to take your life into your own hands, take that control back, gain that control, because I think a lot of women themselves, when they get into relationship or even marriage, like, they kind of change themselves and they kind of depend on this other person as support
Yes.
for themselves, not just like financially sometimes, but even emotionally or just approval wise. So I think that's very important, even when you're in a relationship, to take that control and have control over your own happiness, have
Yeah.
control over your own success, because you can't really put that in anyone else's hands.
No, and I didn't realize that because I'd always done that for so long. Whoever I was with was sort of my identity. I would take on their identity. And being insecure, not thinking I was very smart, not feeling good about the way I looked. My ex-husband was extremely good looking. And the reaction that we would get when we go out together, people were like floored that he would be with me. And it should have made me feel horrible, but it made me feel like I was worth something, that this guy chose me. And looking back on that, I see how messed up that was.
Yeah.
I was the one in the relationship who had the morals, the structure, the wherewithal to like be a good person and make all the money and have our lives become what it became. And we were able to buy a house with pay the down payment and our mortgage, no problem, because I made that happen. So I didn't see my own worth in the relationship, and that's a mistake I will never make again.
Right. So how were you able to overcome? I know you said you had to find groups of support and just had to realize that you were worth more. How were you able to overcome those thoughts and that you weren't enough, that you weren't smart, that you weren't beautiful? How were you able to overcome that and become confident and strong as a woman?
It was a long process. And different processes for each. I mean, not being confident in the way I felt, or that I looked, I had to go down a nutrition journey. I had to look at, okay, well, why don't I feel good? Well, because you're 300 pounds. Okay, so how do we fix that? Like, there's no way around that. It's not this person's fault or that person. Like, you're making choices that are leading you down that road. So let's change those choices. I think it's all about choices and forgiveness. To have the knowledge that you always have a choice, and you could make an excuse for not making the choices that are going to be aligned with your goal. But in the end, it's your choice. So I was choosing to be unhealthy. I was choosing to eat things that made me feel good inside for the moment because I felt so terrible. But in the long run, that wasn't aligned with what my goals were and how I wanted to feel. So recognizing that, therapy helped me find that direction and understand goals and alignment. And forgiveness is huge. You have to forgive yourself in the role, the part you played in where you are in your life that you're trying to get out of. I had to forgive myself for not making the choice to leave earlier. I had to forgive myself for choosing this man, and that was tough. And I had to forgive him because, you know, we have children together. We're always going to be a part of our lives, and he is who he is, and that's never going to change. So just moving on from that situation and thinking, well, okay, what did I get out of it? How did it make me stronger? What are the blessings that came from it? Looking at those silver linings, and truly forgiving him, because he doesn't know any better, and he never will.
Right. I think forgiveness is key, and just looking at the positive side of every negative situation is very, very, very important, because you don't want to continue going through life just regretting and just feeling sorry for yourself. It's not going to get you anywhere.
Right.
Just doing
being
that,
angry.
you're just going to stay stuck. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I took
sure.
a single moms group after I got divorced, after I was separated, and because just a lot of friends started coming to me, and because I literally 1 week said I'm pregnant, and then like 2 weeks later said I'm getting divorced on Facebook. So everyone knew.
Everyone was just like, whoa, what's going on?
And then it became like, oh, well, I'm in this horrible situation, and I knew she just was. So people started reaching out to me. Girlfriends of mine were like, hey, you know, this is actually what's going on in my marriage, and I need some support. So I started an online group for women, for single moms. And that was one of the things I was seeing, is that people were so angry. And I was like, that still is tethering you to that other person. If you let go of that anger, if you forgive, and you start to move in a positive direction, there are so many positives for making a huge change, whether it be a divorce or a location change or a job change. You have to look at the things that you were given to deal with as blessings, because they make you better in so many different ways, whether it be stronger or you just have more information moving on. So that's what I try and do, is always look at the positives that come out of something.
No, really, that's awesome. That's awesome. So how would you say you found your way into becoming a brand strategist? What's the story on that?
Well, I was always creative, and I used to, it sounds ridiculous, but I always thought smoking cigarettes was really cool when I was a kid, because all my grandmothers and my aunts did it. And I was like, oh, that's really neat. You know, horrible. But for whatever reason, I came up with my own paper cigarette brand. And like, it was my first branding project. I'll never forget it. And I just thought it was so cool to like make a package and the pieces that went with it. And it all sort of worked and spoke together. I mean, it was a terrible example of what it was, but that was sort of where I started thinking like, this is something cool. And I've always noticed brands when they would shift their branding, their tone, their messaging. It was just always something that's been very fascinating to me. And growing up doing yearbook and things like that, I really fell into, and I was very technologically savvy. I was a major computer nerd from a young age. You're too young to remember, but I started out with DOS, and I'm teaching my parents how to use a PC Junior when I was like 9 years old.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So it kind of combined both the technical side of things and the creative side of things. And yeah, so I went to school in Philadelphia and lived there for 4 years and got my degree, and worked in New York City for a little while, and decided that I was sort of disenfranchised, or disenchanted, it's a better word, with the process of working with clients in the city. And at the time that I was there, it wasn't the .com boom, but it was like the very, very trickling end of it. So you couldn't name companies fast enough. You couldn't brand them fast enough. And the whole name of the game was they probably weren't going to be around in a couple months. So it had to be like, and there were just so many popping up and dying, or being bought out. I mean, everyone, that was their goal, was to start a company and be bought out. So it was an extremely impersonal impersonal process. And I interned with a really big branding agency when I was still in college, and I could not believe they were taking books of affixes and prefixes and putting them together, and they were like, let's just come up with 40 names and I was like, really? Like, why did the person start the company? What was the passion behind it? But none of that was like, it didn't matter. That didn't become a part of branding a company for years. So I just felt like this is not the way I want to do things. And I got some really good experience, and I decided I'm going to start my own company. So I left, and I also wanted to be with my kids. And I didn't have my son at the time. I wasn't pregnant yet, but I knew that was like my goal. I wanted to work for myself and kind of build a business that wasn't your typical looking design studio or agency, or I knew I could leverage my digital technologies knowledge and make something different.
That's awesome. So what would you say is your version of success and has it changed from the time that you were able to make that mindset shift and from today to today?
Yes, so like 1,000 times. I guess at one point, I thought I wanted to have a bunch of in-office staff running my studio and working with, really incredible brands. And that looked like an in-person large team. That's what that package looked like. And I started to build that, and I hated it. I love working with new designers. That is something that I will always do. I have a lot of students that I mentor and designers that I mentor, and watching their career growth is amazing. I don't want to have a team that I have to manage in that way. I want to be a big, huge part of the design process. And there's a thing that I get out of working with a client in person and talking to them and getting into their head and the psychology of what they want to do and how they built their business to create the final product. And I can't scale that.
Right.
So
it's like teaching someone how to be you.
It was, and it's just not I have so many friends that have gone that route, and they're happy, and it makes, their lives beautiful and purposeful. I think it's something that it's a tough thing to admit, because you have an idea of what this is supposed to look like. And then when you find out you hate that, and you can make it whatever you want. And I think that's a lot of times what people don't really feel like they have the freedom to do, is it doesn't have to be this model. There's 1,000 things around that model that you'll make a ton of money. You'll be super happy. You can mold it to what you want it to be. So yeah, I think, my vision of what I wanted to create has changed 1,000 times over. But I'm really happy with what it is now.
No, definitely. I think the most important thing is for someone who's starting their business to find something that they're passionate about, because it's not going to get old to you. If it's something that you love to do, it's not going to get old to you. It's going to continue to grow because you're going to be passionate about continuing to grow that company or that business. So I think that is one of the most important key factors.
Yeah, and don't be afraid of it shifting gears in your head. Like I a couple times in my life, I really thought I wanted to work in the city and live in New York City, and I was absolutely shocked that I hated it so much. It really surprised me.
Definitely not a city girl.
I loved the city. It just wasn't really aligned with my ultimate goals. And my ultimate goals are freedom to kind of do what I want to do, be with my kids, be a parent, and but also I work with incredible brands. And that's, I think, what really was amazing to me, is that I could make these choices and still have the career, the type of clients, the financial gains that I never thought I could get. I always thought it had to be in this way. And then when I had when I was brave enough to make those choices and see it turn out the way it has, I was happily surprised.
Hmm. No, that's awesome. Um, what would you say is one thing you would tell yourself? Like if you had to go back to, let's see, 16-year-old Kendra, what would you tell her?
Um, to know that she's incredibly strong and that she's a leader and that she doesn't have to try and fit in, because sometimes fitting in is not necessary. You can stand up and be your own person and have your own thoughts and weird ways. And there's a place for that in this world. There's a place for everybody. So I'd say
Really
stop trying to
important.
conform.
No, honestly, and I think especially in the social media era that we're in now, it's extremely, extremely important. Not only image wise, but to say, there are different people who are achieving different goals on different timelines, different ages. So
Yeah.
you have to realize that your life is not on someone else's same timeline. You have to realize that you're on your own timeline, and you can't compare yourself to someone else achieving something sooner or at a different age than you are, or someone being like 16, because there are a lot of 16-year-olds now being able to buy their own home. So
Yeah.
you have to be confident in your own journey and just trust your process and know that everything is going to come in its right timing.
Right.
You have to be ready to receive all of those good things that are going to come to you, but you have to just be patient and wait your own time.
I think enjoying that journey, not always looking for the next goal, just enjoy being where you're at and really living in that space and what you've already created. You may still have a million things you want to do, but look how far you've come.
Right.
And that timeline thing is something I think that probably, I'd love to see statistics on this, but I would venture to say that women feel that more than men.
I would say so.
I mean, biologically.
Yes, because we're like on a biological clock. So especially, a lot of people don't realize that, it's not really okay to ask women, when are you going to get married or when are you going to have a kid? It's like, sometimes that's not really in our own control. So we have all these factors coming at us like, you're supposed to be doing this by this stage, this by this age. What are you waiting for? But it's like, okay, like I'm trying here.
Yeah, I think, I'm a long ways out from those questions because I'm 40 now. But yeah, it's a big reason why I decided to marry my ex-husband. Because when he asked me, I knew in my gut that this was wrong. But I remember thinking, well, I'm 23 at the time. And I wanted to like check all these boxes I had. God forbid I'm having children after I'm 30. So
meanwhile, I'm like, yeah, I think I can wait that long.
Yeah, I mean, that was 20 years ago. So it honestly has changed so much in just this time span. It was a pretty hefty, I don't know what the numbers are now, but I know with science and technology, women have more options where before, it was really drummed into our heads, like you have to have babies young or, medical issues can happen. Now it's like, that's crap. You can have kids in your 50s if you want to. So yeah, I wish I hadn't had that.
Those women in England, I think, that have some of them have kids at like 70 years old. I'm like, whoa, I don't think that late.
Yeah, I don't know if I have the energy for that. Mine are 13 and 9 now, and I'm like, whew.
Oh my goodness. No,
but yeah, that timeline thing is not a real thing. So if that's in the back of your head, like really try and get rid of that because it's not true. It's not real. Yeah. And what you were saying about social media too, and feeling like you have to fit a mold, like the people that do really well are the ones that don't. So stand up and be yourself. Think outside the box. Yeah. Be different. Everybody has like their own special thing.
Right. Success comes when you are comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Right. And, that's what building a brand is around now. I mean, like I said, when I started, it was so impersonal, and I purposely left to start working with brands on a much more personal basis because I always knew that was the value, that they offered something different. And what was that? Why did you start this? I think that can be done for yourself as a person as well. Build your personal brand. If you're not who you want to be yet, build that brand around yourself so you can step into that. Okay, I am this executive, or I have this beautiful business, or I'm, international. Create those ideas so visibly that you can live at that life. You can live that persona and be who you really want to be. Even if you aren't quite there yet, you can get there.
Right. And I think it's important to do things for yourself. I think we're, again, in this social media era where we're doing things for other people. We're trying to have the most followers, the most likes, the most engagement. And it's like, if you do things for yourself and the enjoyment of yourself, other people will see the authenticity in that and they will follow you just off of that alone. You don't
100%.
have to make something just to like make someone like you or make someone be attracted to you. Just be yourself.
Yeah.
I think that's really important. So let's say you had to put one thing on a billboard. What would it be?
Like a message?
Yes.
Follow your bliss. I see it. It breaks my absolute heart when I have people come to me and say, like, I hate my job. And like, you spend so much time of your life doing your job. It should be something that you love doing. And even if you can't, like, I never recommend someone leaving their job without a plan, or starting their business while they're at their job. I think that's the way to go. But you can make those choices. You can shift things and set a plan so that you can do the thing you love and make it the way you receive income. I think a lot of times there's also an issue of, well, what is that? And, I have to know exactly what that is. You don't. You can just start something. Like, if you love doing something, just start it. It doesn't have to be like this huge thing yet. Like, start it, see how you like it, shift and pivot, and it will naturally grow and turn into the thing that you always wanted to do. You don't have to have it completely laid out before that. I think not getting stuck and blocked by, I need to know what the end result is really, really important, because you'll never know what that looks like.
Right. No, I think it's really important because a lot of people, it's hard for them to accept change or want to make a change. So let's say, I like to tell people a lot, it's like, let's say you're going on your regular daily path. You have this whole plan just mapped out. And then you come to a construction site on your regular journey. So like, what are you going to do? Are you just going to like sit there and be like, okay, I'll wait till they're done with the construction? Or are you going to just like make a detour? Like you can have the same end goal, just like the journeys to get there can change. It can shift. Totally. It's just like you have to be able to make those changes and you have to be comfortable with making them. So like I said, being comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah. And there, especially with this digital age, you can get to where you need to be in such a different way than the models that have been put in front of our faces and drummed into us as this is the only way you do this. One of my goals is major travel, and that would require me to have a virtual team. So I have that now. If I had that team in the office with, all of that, me needing to be there, I would never be able to show up for them the way I wanted to because my heart's not there. I want to be like a digital nomad, sort of, wherever we end up.
Right. Being able to work from wherever you want to. I think
But that's what's important to me. That's not what's important to everybody.
Not everybody, but like everyone has their own success. But I think in a sense, there's a lot more people looking for freedom with their time now as the version of success.
Right. And I think COVID's really kind of put us in that headspace to really look at how we're spending our time. We were talking earlier, but I'm in New York and we were shut in for 3 months, and it was, we had this very hectic lifestyle. I mean, I was out of the house constantly running, whether it be going to see clients, going to the city, because I'm out on Long Island, I'm not in the city. But there was a lot of time spent commuting and going to see people and working relationships, and then taking my kids everywhere. And then when everything stopped, it was like, wait a minute.
This is possible?
Yeah, I think that's what it was. Everyone just said, well, no, we have to meet in person. We have to do all these things. And it actually turns out you don't. You can still make
Right.
that connection. You can still be extremely productive and
Mhm.
also live a balanced life.
Definitely. Definitely. So if you had to say one last thing to inspire women around the world to just dream with unlimited possibilities, what would it be?
There is nothing that you can dream that you can't achieve without hard work and a plan. So just trust in that if you really figure out how to, and there's, with all the resources we have now, there's nothing you can't figure out. You could teach yourself how to be, a rocket scientist if you wanted to without actually going to school. I mean, you really can do anything. It's just a matter of
Right.
figuring out
The
how to do
resources
it.
are all there.
Hmm.
It's just the fact of just digging for them and having the patience to be able
Yeah.
to find those
And
answers that you're looking
trusting
for.
yourself, trusting your gut, trusting, if you know what your baseline is, these are the things that you want to have in your life, and these are the things that are going to make you happy. And if you're making
Mhm.
choices and coming up with strategies and plans that are aligned with that, you can't lose.
Mhm. Right. And as a woman, like you said earlier, your gut feeling was telling you that, that marriage was all wrong. You shouldn't be doing it, but you went with it anyway. So as women, we need to trust our gut because
Yes,
it's 9 times out of 10, it's always right.
yes, yes. And everything happens for a reason. So um,
Hmm.
I've
Definitely.
learned lessons through every struggle I've ever been through, and I'm thankful for every single one. I
Yeah,
wouldn't
I
change
think
a
it's
thing.
important. I think it's important to go through certain things, but more important for you to learn from your
Yes,
mistakes. Because
I
if you
make
don't learn from
mistakes.
them, then you're just going to continue to make the same mistakes. So,
Exactly. I make mistakes, but I don't make them twice.
right, definitely. It's awesome. So, is there any last things that you'd like to say? How can people find you? What's your website, your social handles? We'll also link those in the
Yeah.
description.
So my Instagram is where I tend to be living these days. You can find me at Kendra Beavis, and I'm sure you'll put that somewhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just think, there's nothing that you can't achieve. And if you need support, there are so many places you can find that. Um, and it's such an exciting time to be alive. I think there's especially if you're starting your career. Like I said, I work with a lot of students, and it's amazing to kind of watch them have all this opportunity at their fingertips. And you can even have that when you're still in your career. It's just the choice to make a change can
Right.
completely set you off on a whole new path. So love that journey.
Yes, love it, enjoy it, treasure it.
Yes, definitely.
Well, thank you so much, Kendra, for sharing your story with us today. We had an awesome conversation, loved every bit of it. We thank you again for joining us today. As I as you know, I'm your host, Maya Chanel, and this is Made to Dream. And thank you guys for tuning in.